Hello everyone, my name is Cynthia Bean and this is my capstone presentation for Advanced Clinical Practice to complete a Master's in Social Work degree with the University of West Florida. This paper is based on my internship at an anonymous counseling app called Hear Me. This capstone paper compiles 900 internship hours, personal development, courses, and supervision to examine a client's case by presenting the assessment, intervention, and evaluation used throughout the treatment process. The purpose of this paper is to demonstrate the application of knowledge and skills acquired in graduate-level social work education and apply it to real-world practice. It begins by providing background information about the selected client and the presenting concerns, followed by a discussion of the intervention and theoretical frameworks used by the social worker. Finally, the paper offers insight into the overall therapeutic process and evaluates the effectiveness of the selected treatment approach, showing an increased quality of life due to improved relationships, self-actualization, and how core beliefs are changed. Engagement with the client was guided by my understanding of social work theories, ethics, and intervention techniques in a text-based anonymous counseling platform. Because services were delivered through an online application that keeps clients' information confidential, rapport is built through empathy, reflective listening, open communication, questions, and non-judgmental communication. Trust and disclosure were built through written communication, emotional tone, and patterns of expression. Knowledge of human behavior and the social environment helped the engagement process by providing understanding of the client's long-standing difficulties. Theories like attachment and systems explain the acts of avoiding emotional closeness and doesn't focus on his individual faults. The client selected is an adult male who speaks fluent English. He is over the age of 18 and he is coming to therapy because he has ongoing relationship difficulties with his spouse. He also reports a lack of emotional connection within the relationship, and the tension in the marriage is increasing due to disconnection and avoidance with close relationships. He relies on strangers for advice and is self-reliant, which has helped him most of his life. He believes his independence has helped him navigate difficult situations and has become a part of his identity. The next part of the assessment is the referral source. The client independently sought counseling. He expresses a desire to improve his relationship and explores ways to strengthen communication with his spouse. He also wanted guidance in managing the emotional impact of relationship stressors. Through counseling, the client hopes to gain insight into the situation. The history of the presenting problems include the client reporting self-reliance and emotionally distance for as long as he can remember. He shared that he has always handled problems on his own and rarely turns to others for emotional support, and that he's proud of his independence, though it has been a major problem in his life. When discussing his childhood, he described his relationship with his parents as feeling more like an acquaintance relationship than a close parent-child bond. He explained that although they were present in his life, he never felt a strong emotional connection with them and did not feel comfortable going to them for support when he was struggling. He also has never experienced any type of connection and finds the concept confusing. He has expressed that he doesn't believe that other people experience close relationships and that it is a myth. For substance and medical history, we don't have any indications of medical or substance use history due to the anonymous nature of the counseling platform, but as time goes on, there may be some that present itself. Personal history, the client does not experience close relationship with others in his personal life and often feels disconnected and lonely. He feels more comfortable coming to Hear Me and talking to strangers than with his spouse or close friends. He experiences trust issues, which has made it difficult for him to build or maintain close relationships, keeping him isolated. The client acknowledges that this pattern has been present throughout his life and may contribute to difficulty in forming meaningful connections. The theoretical framework is guided by attachment theory and solution-focused therapy. With attachment theory, there is common attachments such as secure attachment, which is seen in early childhood where caregivers are consistently responsive and emotionally available. Someone with an insecure attachment or avoidant attachment usually avoids trusting people to care for their emotions. Though having an avoidant attachment is not permanent, the secure attachments can be formed through consistent, supportive relationships, self-awareness, and therapy to help the client gradually become comfortable with trust and emotional closeness. Ainsworth, 1978. While discussing a conflict with the client had with the spouse, he was unsure how to feel about the conversation they had, where she expressed that he did not come to her with his problems. Using the miracle question from solution-focused therapy, I asked what a perfect marriage looks like to him, Sweet Institute. He replied that he handles everything on his own and that his wife is simply there. I reflected his words back to him by stating how he wants his wife to be around physically but not emotionally. I then asked what he thought his spouse would say in response to the same question and encouraged him to ask her directly what a perfect marriage looks like. This encourages open conversation about their future and clarifies what expectations are. Empathy and reflective listening were used throughout the session to help the client feel seen and heard. For the mental status examination, the client presented as alert, oriented, cooperative, and demonstrated logical thought processes with fair insight and judgment. There was no suicidal or homicidal ideations reported, and no formal assessments were administered because of the nature of the app. The methods used to select interventions and theoretical rationale were selected based on social work coursework, supervision, and evidence-informed practices aligned with NASW ethical standards, NASW 2021. Assessment findings identified patterns of attachment avoidance, emotional distancing, self-reliance, and difficulty with emotional intimacy. Drescher 2025. The client's relationship concerns with difficulty understanding his spouse's needs for emotional connection and challenges with communication. And systems theory was used to understand the couple's relationship as a system where each partner's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors influence the other. Shapiro 2021. Instead of focusing on individual faults and kind of reworking that whole system altogether. Attachment theory was applied to explore how early caregiver relationships may have contributed to the client's avoidance attachment style, emotional distance, and discomfort with vulnerability. Simply Psychology 2025. This kind of gives an explanation not only to the client of why he feels so disconnected from people, but also to help him understand and know that you can change your attachment style. The treatment focused on identifying relationship patterns, improving communication, and supporting the development of healthier emotional connections. For the intervention, there are 3 goals. The first is to increase emotional intimacy and connection within the marital relationship. This is to address the problem of emotional detachment, and it will include SMART objectives of identifying and verbalizing at least one emotion that he experiences that week every session for 6 consecutive sessions. The client will initiate one emotionally meaningful conversation with spouse weekly for 6 to 8 weeks. And then he can rate emotional closeness with spouse weekly using a 0 to 10 scale, demonstrating at least a 2-point increase over 2 months would be the goal. These interventions will be used using the feelings wheel and the labeling exercise that help him identify his emotion, Wilcox 1982. Although the solution-focused miracle question is used to address the client's ideal relationship looks like, what his wife's ideal marriage looks like, and then creating a marriage that includes compromise in a relationship they can both emotionally feel safe in and have a good quality of life in. Emotional language is modeled during the session, asking the client how he feels, and then using reflective listening during the session to ensure the clients feel heard, validated, and continuously labeling his emotions throughout the process. The second problem the client is facing is communication difficulties. The goal will be to improve communication and reduce avoidance during conflict using the objectives of I statements and at least one conflict discussion per week, and then active listening skills in 3 role play sessions. The client will report decreased avoidance behaviors in conflict situations over the 6 to 8 weeks. Interventions will focus on strengthening the client's communication skills for using techniques such as I statements to encourage more effective and respectful conversations with his spouse. Examples of marital conversations are shown through role play activities, and a systemic approach will be used for communication patterns within the relationship, helping both partners understand their relationship system. The third problem of limited help seeking and emotional self-reliance is going to be solved by increasing his willingness to seek support and improve emotional openness with others. The objectives include identifying at least 2 potential support figures or resources within 2 sessions, and then practicing asking for help in one low-stake situation weekly, such as like helping with the dishes or taking the trash out or picking up his clothes or anything low stakes, and then increasing comfort with vulnerability measured via self-report scale. The strength of independence will be acknowledged but reframed as isolation and loneliness in his personal relationships. Cognitive reframing of beliefs about vulnerability and trust will be implemented throughout the process, and the client will begin to engage in help-seeking behavior gradually during low-stake situations such as asking for help. Implementation of interventions and practice process. The interventions were delivered through text-based counseling sessions using open-ended questions, reflective listening, and solution-focused techniques such as the miracle question. The therapeutic process aimed to meet the client's needs while working through his avoidance of vulnerability. Goals were developed by using the client's concerns of marital disconnection and maintaining his autonomy, which aligns with the NASW ethical principle of self-determination, NASW 2021. Advocacy, negotiation, and mediation were used during the process by encouraging perspective taking, reframing his independence as a strength, and finding balance between his self-reliance and his spouse's need for emotional connection. If the client were to transition or terminate, there will be things that needed to be completed before that can happen. That includes the client having gradual and lasting change in communication skills and emotional awareness. His goals that we reviewed will have to be accomplished, and future goals will be created to include long-term, short-term, and life goals. And the client's marriage will maintain improvements and show long-term stability before termination. The methods of intervention were used to address attached avoidance and relationship conflict. Those interventions were psychoeducation, cognitive behavioral therapy, and solution-focused approaches. The target problems in this case include the client's emotional detachment and his limited intimacy in his marriage. So the first goal for the client is to increase his emotional intimacy and connection within the marital relationship. This is by strengthening the couple's bond and their stability. The second goal is to improve communication and help reduce avoidance during conflict. And the third goal is to increase the client's willingness to seek support and become more emotionally open within the relationship. Systemic family systems perspective frames these concerns as patterns within the relationship rather than individual deficits. The selected interventions of a feelings wheel, I statements, active listening, role playing, and reframing were used to meet these goals. For data collection, organization, and the evaluation process, it was collected through unstructured anonymous counseling format. The organization contained weekly progress SOAP notes, and emotional closeness ratings on a 0 to 10 scale, and frequency tracking of communication progress. The data would be analyzed by comparing the client's baseline functioning with ongoing weekly reports to identify patterns of change in emotional expression and avoidance behaviors. If formal evaluation were implemented in a traditional counseling setting, the experiences in close relationships scale short form would be administered to assess the client's perceived level of intimacy and attachment within his relationship with his spouse. Nova Psych 2026. The proposed evaluation design would be a single A-B design, a research method that examines the effects of an intervention on an individual over time by comparing behaviors before and after treatment. This case has some strengths, challenges, and needs. The client has many strengths, including his high level of independence and self-reliance. He is able to find support through the Hear Me app. He has proven he's resilient. He is self-aware. He values his marriage and is resource-oriented. He also has the capacity for insight, self-awareness, and reflection on his relationship and life choices, which is beneficial for healing and important for his desire to strengthen his marriage. He reports empathy for others, and he's also someone that people go to for advice, and he is that person that he wants from other people. They can come to him and he gives them advice and listens and can't do it the other way around. So the challenges the client faces are his avoidant attachment style, which limits his emotional intimacy. For treatment, the client needs increased emotional awareness and expression and improved communication skills. Expanding his network and going beyond self-reliance will allow the client to experience love and belonging, as seen in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Maslow 1943. In summary, the formal evaluation measures were not used in this case. The selected interventions were expected to increase the client's emotional ratings over time, along with more frequent emotional expression. Over the 6 to 8 week intervention period, the client demonstrated improved communication skills through behavioral changes, and the intervention outcomes indicated improvements in emotional functioning, with reports of emotional detachment decreasing and communication improving. Here you will see the evaluation. This is what it looks like after the 6-week counseling period, suggesting that emotion-focused and solution-focused interventions were effective. The client's progress can be understood through attachment theory, which explains the slow changes and how hard it is to change deeply conditioned and difficult attachment patterns. Another explanation for the observed changes are that he has a self-reported bias, or maybe he's concerned about the social work intern's feelings and wanting to be perceived as making progress. The Hear Me agency evaluates practice through case presentation during supervision and by collecting clients' ratings after each session. The client progress is documented using SOAP notes within the app for every client, and having these ratings and supervisory reviews with supporting feedback is part of the National Association of Social Work's value of integrity by promoting consistent adherence to ethical principles and professional standards. In ASW 2021, the further To further strengthen the agency's valuation process, HEARME could implement standardized client satisfaction surveys at service termination and incorporate single case A/B designs for intervention effectiveness. In conclusion, the case paper demonstrates the application of graduate level social work knowledge and skills through the assessment, intervention, and evaluation of the client experiencing conflict and emotional attachment difficulties. By using attachment theory, systems theory, solution-focused therapy, CBT, and a strength-based approach, a treatment plan was developed to address the client's concerns. This reinforced the importance of understanding early life experiences, which explains a lot of adult relationships and how our early experiences can shape our adult lives. It also highlights the value of the therapeutic process by supporting and maintaining meaningful and lasting change. The following presentation explores 3 significant areas of social work practice: ethical decision-making, human diversity, social justice, and social policy practice. The first section examines an ethical dilemma while providing support through an anonymous counseling platform, focusing on the balance between client confidentiality, self-determination, and the responsibility to protect client safety when suicidal ideation is present. The second section discusses a social justice issue involving a single father experiencing barriers related to caregiving responsibilities, access to resources, and challenges associated with raising a child with a disability. The final section discusses the social policy of medical assistance in dying or assisted suicide in other countries and its impact on individuals with chronic mental health conditions, how we understand autonomy when it comes to medical access, and care and protections for vulnerable populations. The first section is about an ethical issue, which is a client that I have counseled who was feeling hopeless, and they stated that they did not want to be here anymore. They stated other things like that they wish they were never born and had a lot of hopelessness, and also the expression of wanting to apply for medical assistance in dying. The client has a history of schizophrenia and child sexual abuse, along with physical abuse and neglect. This scenario created an ethical dilemma between respecting the client's privacy and autonomy and my responsibility to protect their safety and well-being. Personal values of compassion, respect, and help during crisis are things that I hold on when I am counseling and talking to people. But I also have to keep in mind the NASW values of dignity and worth of a person. And that includes keeping protection for clients who may be a danger to themselves or others. And then the ethical issue of this increased my self-awareness by helping me understand how I would respond in a high-stress situation. I followed organizational protocols by referring to the crisis intervention resources provided and local emergency services. I was able to stay professional during this counseling session by responding with empathy, active listening, and having a non-judgmental attitude. I validated the client's emotions while emphasizing that there is importance of seeking immediate support for safety, and that is my number one concern. I have already built rapport with this client before, and this seems to be like an ongoing issue, and having suicidal ideation is not anything new for this client because she has been around for a few years, and also because the app that I work for is anonymous, so I'm unable to provide like direct crisis support and emergency services, I have to just refer her out to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And I have talked to my supervisor and used supervision for making decisions regarding this, and listened to my other intern peers who have dealt with the same ethical issue and discussed it with them as well. The principle of client self-determination, National Association of Social Workers, was especially relevant because the client expressed thoughts related to MAID and feelings of hopelessness. So she had to make that own self-determination and decide if she wanted to call for professional hospitalization or emergency services. Like I said, there are limited options due to the anonymous nature, but the social workers have a duty to protect from self-harm. The process of MAID is legal in the client's country, and further assessment is needed before assuming intent. So just because she said that she wanted to apply for MAID doesn't necessarily mean that she is actively suicidal or has a plan. So using the ethical decision making of Model 3, Essential Steps for Ethical Problem Solving, I use this model to determine what has to be identified. The dilemma involved determining how to respond when the client's safety became a concern due to the expression of suicidal ideation. I prioritized values and then placed the prevention of harm as the highest priority, followed by dignity and worth of the person, trust, self-determination, and confidentiality. Based on this prioritization, the appropriate action was to provide crisis intervention resources if the client's risk escalated further and they disclosed a specific plan or intent to harm themselves or others. My supervisor explained that additional measures, such as providing IP addresses, information to law enforcement when required, could be considered to protect the safety of the client and others. Social workers face many ethical dilemmas, and we must remain committed to providing ethical, compassionate, and client-centered care in challenging situations. The human diversity social justice issue that I chose involves a single father who was recently abandoned by his spouse and left to care for their 5-year-old child and their 3-year-old child with autism. The parent was experiencing depression, burnout, and numerous social injustices associated with being a single parent. He reported being able to secure affordable daycare, access adequate support services for his child with autism, and maintain employment due to the demands of caregiving, frequent appointments, illness, and disability-related challenges. I related to this client because I also have children of the same age and have shared similar parenting struggles. There was some countertransference there because I wanted to help in a more meaningful way. I wanted to provide more resources or make like a real impact, and the only thing that I could do because of the app being anonymous was to allow for self-determination and for him to pursue his own goals, which align with the NASW Code of Ethics. This was challenging to me because I have some deep society beliefs that fathers are less involved in parenting, and this challenged that and made me realize that this is a universal issue and not related to gender at all, and being a sole caretaker has barriers and limited opportunities compared to those without. Working with this client emphasized the importance of taking a person and environment perspective rather than viewing his difficulties as individual problems. It became evident that many of his challenges were influenced by broader societal and structural factors, including limited access to affordable childcare, inadequate support services for children with disabilities, and insufficient respite resources for caregivers. Social work literature highlights that parents of children with developmental disabilities often experience higher levels of stress, financial hardship, and mental health challenges than the general population, particularly when adequate support systems are unavailable. Lindo, 2016. Knowing that he was encountering barriers challenged me to expand my knowledge and strengthen my advocacy skills when working with single parents. I became more aware of how my personal experiences and assumptions can influence my assessment of clients, and this awareness strengthens my ability to engage with the client from an anti-oppressive perspective, recognizing both the challenges he faces and the resilience he demonstrated in continuing to care for his children despite adversity. My client does not belong to a traditionally oppressed, marginalized, or disenfranchised group. He has, however, experienced significant social and structural disadvantages related to his role as a caregiver. He does not have enough support and is experiencing financial strain, isolation, and emotional distress. These challenges reduce his ability to fully participate in the workforce and access opportunities that could have improved his family's quality of life. In supervision, we discussed the importance of social workers connecting individuals to resources like childcare, disability support, and crisis services. But this case specifically was not discussed. However, I practiced reflective listening, used open-ended questions, affirmed his hard work and dedication as a father, and summarized his goals and feelings. At the macro level, advocacy includes supporting policies that increase access to affordable childcare, expand services for children with disabilities, and improve the ability of respite care. This aligns with the second CSWE competency, which focuses on the person and environment perspective and advocating for resources. Council on Social Work Education, 2022. The policy issue that I selected is the medical assistance in dying. This client that has made me aware of this issue is a chronically depressed 38-year-old woman who has experienced significant trauma during her childhood, including sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. This has been ongoing for at least 6 years, but assumptions have been made that it has been a lifetime problem. She has become hopeless and is considered applying for MAID, which is legal in Canada where she lives, but is currently suspended until 2027. Her feelings are that her conditions will not be improved and that she does not have a good quality of life. This has impacted my intervention because it requires exploration of her motivations, looking into her mental health history, and what support systems that she has. The policy impacts other clients in the agency who are living with terminal illness as well as those experiencing chronic pain or disabilities. In order to improve this policy related to MAID, there should be increased palliative care services for individuals. There also should be a greater consistency in criteria for longer assessment timelines, such as 6 months to 1 year, rather than the current 90-day or 15-day waiting periods in certain cases of mental illness. Completed Life, 2026. Research suggests that MAID policies are most effective when individual autonomy is balanced with appropriate protections for vulnerable populations. Fallon Kund, 2017. I would also improve the consistency of eligibility criteria and review the processes in which decisions are being made, how effective their teams are for prevention, and if they're able to create a team of physicians, social workers, physical and specialized therapists, along with maybe group support before considering MAID. What I did is I provided emotional support through active listening, open-ended questions, affirmations, and empathy. We discussed her support systems like her mother and coping strategies such as her hobbies of Russian novels and listening to music. I can advocate for training on MAID related issues and referral services through my supervisor and ensure that the client felt heard, supported, and expressed appreciation for having someone to talk to. Intervention strategies were guided by clinical judgment, the ethical standards outlined in the NASW Code of Ethics, and Hear Me agency guidelines for suicide support. With no limitation, I would create universal access to palliative care, mental health services, end-of-life counseling, and family support services to meet the expectations of social workers to pursue social change on behalf of vulnerable and oppressed individuals. NASW 2021. In conclusion, this paper explored the application of social work, the values and competencies through ethical decision-making, human diversity, social justice, and policy advocacy. The ethical dilemma involving suicidal ideation demonstrates the importance of balancing confidentiality, self-determination, and the responsibility to protect client safety using ethical standards and models. Social justice case involving a single father caring for children with significant needs highlighted the importance of understanding clients within their social environments and recognizing how systems barriers can impact access to resources, employment, and overall well-being. The discussion of medical assistance in dying emphasizes the complexities of supporting client autonomy while considering access to care and advocacy for vulnerable population. A major takeaway from this assignment was the importance of self-awareness, continued learning of larger systems, and how to approach social work practice with humility and compassion. These cases reinforce that social workers must balance personal values and professional ethics, recognize their own biases, advocate for social change, and pursue their own goals. This has strengthened my understanding of the social work's role for individual client needs, while also challenging barriers that contribute to inequality. Moving forward, I will continue to prioritize ethical, client-centered, and advocacy-focused practice, while supporting individual families and communities that are navigating challenges.